Hello again and welcome to another Morning Glory daily video. In this episode, I want to share with you an amazing experience I recently had. I was given the opportunity to drive, load and shoot a real life tank. I know what you're thinking. Which person was irresponsible enough to let this degenerate command several tons of rolling steel? Well, it's all thanks to my good friend and also happens to be a channel supporter, Alex Wargamer. He has recently got married, and as part of his stag do, his best man Stefan organised all of us to go down to a place called Armourgeddon near Nottingham, and we could do a big session of tank paintball. This involved us learning to get to know the tanks, driving them, all the different functions, learning about the vehicles, and then we actually got to engage in some genuine tank-on-tank combat. And guess what, my dear conscripts? Your man MG here, always the opportunist, pulled out his camera and I took lots of videos and pictures for your viewing pleasure. And so, without further ado, I know we're all dying to just get into this video. So why don't we just crack on and dive right into this. So the first thing that I want to say is, as you're watching this video, if you decide that you would also like to do some tank paintball, then please check out the link I'm going to have in the description to Armourgeddon's website. Now, let me be clear, this isn't a sponsored video. I just enjoyed this experience so much that I wanted to do a video on it. And I truly can't recommend this whole thing enough. It was just perfect from start to finish. When you come onto the site, it's exactly what you expect. There is military hardware all over the place. You walk into what essentially feels like an old hangar, and there's staff there and they've got all sorts of memorabilia. It's just awesome, and the staff themselves are just fantastic. Really friendly, really helpful, and as we're about to see, incredibly knowledgeable as well. You see, whilst I was there, I got chatting to some of the guys that run the place, and they were very kind enough to give me a quick 5-minute interview going over the history of the tank and explaining a little bit more about it. And you know what? I think that is a great place to start off. Let's learn about this vehicle, and then we'll get into the footage of me driving it and shooting it.
Hi then everyone, so my name's G and we're here today at Armourgeddon. This is one of the vehicles we use for our sessions. We are the only place in the world that does the tank paintball battling. So this particular wagon here is listed as an AFV 43230. AFV stands for Armoured Fighting Vehicle. Originally built somewhere between 1962 up to about 1974. Listed as the Berlin Special. So the Berlin Special originally had the 30mm Radar cannon on. All we've done is basically modified and up-armoured that to 5 40mm paintballs. So when you're doing the battling, you're firing 40mm paintballs each other. We are the only place in the world you can do it. The wagon itself is powered by a K60 Rolls-Royce supercharged multi-fuel engine. They pump out somewhere in the region of 240 brake horsepower. If you're lucky and good enough, you're going to get on a good day about 1 mile to the gallon. Nice. They are classed as a multi-fuel, so engine oil, chip pat, perfume, vodka, kerosene, diesel, anything oil-based. But as of April the 1st last year, the government decided to change the rules and you can now only run them on white diesel. So obviously when you see the prices at pumps, imagine how we feel if you're lucky 1 mile to the gallon.
What reactions do you get when you take this to the petrol station?
It can be entertaining sometimes. Obviously, as you can imagine with all the mud though, we have to give it a good clean before they go on the road. In the year 2001, when we declared war officially in Afghanistan, these wagons are still owned by the MOD, where we called again. They were modified to the Mark III version, that's listed as the Bulldog. So the same wagon without the turret on and the fighting compartment of the cage would crew up to 12 people inside. 10 infantry, 1 commander and a driver right to the front out of the way. So the smaller you are, the more they can cram in. So you would definitely get to know the person next to you very, very well, very, very quickly. The MOD, they said ideally want to be somewhere around about 5'6", 5'8", and maybe up to about 14 stone to be a crew member inside. More so, because when you've got all your personal gear and your personal weapon inside, it gets very, very tight, very, very quickly. They are a light vehicle. They only weigh around about 17.5 tonne, battle ready with a turret on. The armour on it is up to about 20-25 million points. As you can see, because these are the early ones, it's all flat armoured. So the Mark III, the Bulldog now, which is the APC version, they've up armoured it, V-shaped hulls underneath to give them the protection for the IEDs, the caging on the outside, anti-personnel. Some of them have like the explosive packs on, so if a round comes in, hit the pack, fire projectile away and detonate away from the vehicle, so it makes it a lot easier. Top speed on the road, on a good day going downhill, you're probably looking up to about 30-35 miles an hour. Naturally, due to the condition of our track, because obviously we're set, the circuit itself, in a former World War II bombing range, you're looking, especially with how boggy it is after like 2 days rain, up to about 4 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Believe me, that's plenty quick enough, as the only person inside the wagon harnessed in is the driver.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you do the drive-in with us, we do different sessions, and we do give each person the opportunity to do the periscope driving as well. So not only do you do the first bit of driving with your head out, we then close you in at a point and all you can see through is your window. It's not on gyro, so it is a fixed position. So if you go over a bump, all you see is the sky. When you come down, all you see is the ground. It's about the same sort of size as your letterbox.
Yeah.
So if you're ever wondering what it's like, go into your house, pop it open, and you'll see the restricted kind of view you get.
Well, I can say, when I did it a moment ago, it was amazing.
It's
Honestly,
pretty good, isn't it?
I made a joke to my friends, screw having a car, where can I get one of these things for my everyday drive?
Right.
It's a ton of fun. So big thank you to G there for taking the time to explain a little bit more about the tank and its history. I know that I've probably been enraging some of the people that are a bit more clued up on military stuff and military history by referring to this thing as a tank. As G explained, it's less of a full-blown tank and more of an armored fighting vehicle. Maybe it'd be classed as an APC or an IFV. If you're one of my regular viewers and you like my Warhammer 40k content, I would say think of this vehicle as more of a chimera, like a dedicated transport, rather than a full-blown main battle tank like the Lehman Russ. But now that we all know about the vehicle, it's time for us to take it out for a spin. So what happened is, one of the staff members gave us a safety briefing and they came along with us as we were driving this thing around, and they taught us how to operate the vehicle. And the first thing that everyone did is learn how to drive it. Now, when the operator, who in our case was Phil, was teaching us how to command and move and go forward and go backwards, left and right, he explains all these different things and it seems really complicated. And it's not his fault, it's just you're learning so much in one go. And then you look down and in front of you are two sticks, or two levers, and one pedal. And you realize that whilst it might all sound very complicated, it's actually unbelievably easy to drive a tank. I would say it is far easier to drive a tank than it is to drive a car. I mean, it helps if you know how to drive a car first. I think that means you get used to the speed and the spatial awareness, and you're aware that the vehicle is bigger than you are and all that kind of stuff that you learn when you're driving a car. But honestly, I just grabbed hold of the sticks and I just went, and within 10 seconds, I just felt confident. I just felt like I knew what I was doing. And I felt, after just driving around the paddock a few times, that I was essentially like a fully trained tank driver. Now, of course, we were only limited to a few miles an hour, but the general concept of just learning to drive a tank is actually incredibly simple. And if maybe you're thinking about doing this, but you're a bit intimidated, you think, oh, it's a bit complicated, honestly, it is one of the easiest things to do, and you can just dive straight in, start pushing those levers forward, backwards, left and right, and just having a great time. So why don't we head on over now to some of the footage of the vehicle being driven. Now, this next footage I'm not driving, because obviously if I was driving I wouldn't be able to film it, but I'm actually sat in the turret whilst one of my fellow crewmates is driving the vehicle around. Just a couple of minutes of footage of this. So once we had all learned how to drive, we then had to get on to the important bit. We had to learn how to fight. And to do this, we each had a go at loading and firing the weapon, and also being the commander who was aiming the turret and adjusting it, and also giving the order to fire. Now, let us be clear for a moment. We were not firing genuine live tank ammunition. I don't know the details behind Armourgeddon's insurance policy, but I'm pretty certain it wouldn't cover civilians shooting 30mm autocannon rounds at each other. Rather, the main weapon of the vehicle had actually been converted over into what was essentially a giant paintball cannon. It had a big compressed air tank on the back, and when you loaded the weapon, you were using what was essentially a big paintball. It was a bit bigger than a golf ball, and what happened was you opened up the breech, you put your paintball in, you closed the breech, and then you charged the weapon, and then you heard the air whooshing into it, and then you pressed the fire button and the paintball would get launched out. So that covers loading and firing the weapon, but then there was another person who was essentially the tank commander who was aiming and giving the order to shoot. Now, to aim the vehicle, essentially there was a little periscope, and on it had a crosshairs, and to move the turret you had two wheels with handles on them. One wheel you would turn and it would move the turret left to right depending on which way you moved it, and the other one would move the barrel up and down. And essentially what you would do is you would move it and you'd get the turret on target, and then the person that was assisting us would say, oh, I think you might need to go a little bit up there, 2 turns, I think you might need to go left a little bit, 1 turn. And so there was a combination of you using the periscope, and then there was someone who was essentially eyeballing it who had a lot of experience. And once we'd all had a few goes at loading and firing and adjusting the turret, we were fully trained and battle ready, and it was time for us to go and engage in the long-awaited, the anticipated, we were all very excited for this bit, the tank-on-tank combat. And this was the most fun. You really got into it. It was so easy to just immerse yourself in the feeling of being in a tank and shooting and combat. Whilst in reality we were taking big paintballs and putting them into an air cannon, in our heads it felt like we were actually there, and it was really, really good. And everyone just got into it. We were like slamming the rounds into the breech, closing it. We were like, ready, and the commander would be like, aim, fire. Oh, it was so good. It was just so awesome. Now, the system they have at Armourgeddon is really, really well thought out. It's brilliant. It's clear that they've got it down to a T. What happens is there are 2 parallel tracks, and at each point on the track there are about 5 or 6 designated stop and fire zones. So each tank goes down the track, they get to the first post, and then they start firing at each other. But there is an element of tactics, because if you can fire your gun quickly enough, then you can start moving on to the next post. And so if you fire fast and start moving, it makes it much harder for the enemy tank to hit you, because you're moving whilst they're still trying to fire, reload, and aim. So it's all about being fast and also being accurate. And you know what, guys? Thanks to one of the other chaps in the tank, Doug, who took some videos as well, I've actually got some footage of me loading and firing the weapon. So why don't we have a look at that now?
Alright, ready? Okay, so you are clear to engage. Then bring it up, 2. With the hit on the wheels there. Bring it down a half. That'll do. Ready? Quiet. Go, 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 go. Okay, that gun needs to come down 3 turns.
I'm ready.
Okay, they're coming to us, you'll see them in a minute.
I see him.
Okay, you are clear to engage.
Quiet.
You get another
Now, our vehicle engaged in 2 tank duels, and we were successful in both of them, scoring the most hits on the enemy vehicle. So not only are we fully trained, but we're also now battle hardened. Huzzah! Overall, I had an absolute blast. It was so much fun. And I just want to say a big thank you to Armourgeddon. They put on a really good show and they just made sure that everything went perfectly. I also want to say a big thank you to Stefan, who was the best man, who organized the whole thing. And of course, congratulations to Alex. I hope you and Kat have many happy years together. And I also want to say a well done to all of the lads in the tank. We had Alex, Stefan, myself, and Doug, and we had our instructor Phil, who made sure we were well looked after. But that's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Leave lots of comments. Let me know what you think down below. And of course, if you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to never miss an episode. Thank you for watching. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.